Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 3 of the XFL is here, and I've got a first look for you on DraftKings. We're going to go through every position. I'm doing these first looks a little bit differently than I did them for NFL, where we have a little bit more information. I've dug in through all the information on PFF, all the target shares, the carries, to try to identify, at least early in the week. I'm recording these on Tuesday instead of my normal first looks for NFL, which come out on Monday, to give PFF a day to get their data up, to give me an extra study day, because so much of XFL is coming down to just identifying the value plays when the weekend gets here. And a lot of those have to do with the injury reports, which obviously aren't out yet earlier in the week. So I'm trying to give you a more informed first look than just the kind of off the cuff first look, especially since I'm not putting out any more video content as the week goes on. But a lot of the plays that we hit the first couple of weeks were still viable when the weekend got here. So I'm trying to stick to kind of a very chalky, very volume driven first look, as touchdowns are extremely at a premium in this league. They just aren't scoring all that much. The quarterback play has not been outstanding outside of a couple of spots that have been pretty good. And knowing which players are on the field is most likely your best bet to actually having success in this league, because the running backs, you only have to play one of them, and the running backs aren't all that great. Not very many touchdowns being scored. Teams not completing a lot of 2-point conversions, which is a little bit shocking, but also not considering the quarterback play. So efficiency really isn't there in this league. We have to depend on volume, and we have to depend on volume from pass catchers, because DraftKings, being a full PPR site, is kind of what it is. So let's take a look at some of the matchups for this weekend, or all of the matchups for this weekend. The Houston Roughnecks are 6-point favorites on the road against the Tampa Bay Vipers, as we see here in the DraftKings Sportsbook. Dallas Renegades, 4.5-point favorites on the road against the Seattle Dragons. The St. Louis Battlehawks, favored by 9.5 against the New York Guardians, with their quarterback struggles that they have, that offense really not clicking at all. And the DC Defenders traveled to Los Angeles to go up against the Cougars. They're not the Wildcats, they're the Cougars. And they are 8.5-point favorites as the Wildcats, or Cougars. Offensive line has not been very good at all, and they drop back a ton. So a big chance for the DC Defenders defense to get an awful lot of pressure on whomever the quarterback is going to be, whether it's Johnson or somebody else. As the injury reports come out this week, we'll find out more. But let's take a look at what we have on this slate. At quarterback, everybody's priced up that's any good whatsoever. So it's almost a pick 'em, essentially, at quarterback. The number one quarterback so far on the season and on the salary sheet is Phillip Walker for the Houston Roughnecks. You saw that they were favored in their game, 27.5 points average for him. He has been somewhat efficient in his throwing. He has actually turned passes into touchdowns. If we look at the first couple of games, with 7 total, and no less than 3 in either game, this offense is kind of performing the way that we thought that it would, being one of the higher efficiency offenses, one of the offenses going to pass the ball 65-70% of the time. They've actually executed on that. So their pass catcher is doing very well. Their quarterback, right now, the most efficient in the league. The quarterback that has been a value for the first couple of weeks is Jordan Ta'amu, mostly because of his rushing, but last week converting 3 touchdowns through the air. 74% completion rate week 1, 81% completion rate in week 2. If he can keep that really high completion percentage, he is very easy to pair with 1, if not 2 of his pass catchers, and the rushing volume that he has basically gives him the best floor outside of Walker of any quarterback in the league. You now have somebody at quarterback here who you're going to get between 3 and 7 points on the ground, right? So that gives him a really solid floor. He has the ability to run in touchdowns. They are throwing the ball enough, and he has been efficient enough to get over 200 yards both games, and with 4 touchdowns through 2 weeks. Probably your best cash game quarterback that's not named Walker if you need to make the savings, 1,400 down. Cardale Jones has done good from a PFF grade perspective. Hasn't really lit up the scoreboard, but hasn't done poorly either. Solid floor for him, 19 and 20 points the first 2 weeks, but we haven't had a ceiling game from him yet. He hasn't hit the bonus yet, hasn't thrown over 2 touchdowns yet. Maybe that's coming. Maybe this is the game that it could happen, but DC has been very good defensively so far. It's going to be interesting to see if DC's been good defensively, which has led to them actually running the ball a little bit more. It's going to be interesting to see if Los Angeles can slow them down, or if as porous as that offensive line has been for Los Angeles, that they're going to get better offensive field position, which leads to DC scoring more touchdowns because of the better field position. If Cardale can be a little bit more efficient throwing the ball, completing only just over 60% of his passes through 2 weeks, we'll just have to see. So for me, it's between Walker and Ta'amu. Let me see which one I'm going to play. Let's start with Ta'amu and work from there. Running backs, a lot of them are priced up. Okay, Butler for Houston, extremely pricey for the volume that we're getting out of him at 8,500, mostly on the backs of those 3 touchdowns. If those touchdowns go away, all of a sudden you've got a 7-point performance in week 1 and you got a 5-point performance in week 2. If we're going to play whack-a-mole at 8,500 at running back, I don't know if that's the right way to go. Cameron Artis-Payne, close to getting the bonus in week 2. A lot of people thought that he was going to be one of the league's best running backs. Now that they've got their quarterback back, Landry Jones, for Dallas, he does look like he's in a position to actually be one of the better running backs in the league. 9 catches through 2 weeks gives him an absolutely solid floor. I would much rather pay for him at 8,300 than 8,500, but I tend to want to punt running back in this league, mostly because I'm playing tournaments and I want somebody that's going to catch the ball a little bit. That leads me to Donnell Pumphrey. If we can get that savings down to 7,000, 5 targets in week 2, 8 targets in week 1, 4 catches over that span. We did get 12 rushes from him in week 2 versus the 4 in week 1. That volume increase is very good. The price increase, though, coming from 3,900 up to 7K, is a little bit shifty for me to want to have to pay up that much to get him. But in a tournament perspective, which is basically all I'm playing for XFL anyway, go ahead and pay for John Legend here with Donnell Pumphrey. That's fine. You can give him, all of you, whatever you need to do to get him into your lineups for tournaments is fine. Jarrell Presley is the other player on DC at running back. Minimal use in the passing game, but at least he's got some usage in the passing game, seeing a lot of carries on the ground, but not being efficient at all with less than 3 yards per carry. The best running back values to me, 1, Donnell Pumphrey, as I mentioned, Matt Jones for St. Louis, who is seeing a ton of volume on the ground, but none through the air. He's going to have to get himself into the end zone, and playing against this New York defense, he may be able to, as that offense has been horrible. Jones really being leaned on by St. Louis a lot. So we'll have to see what happens this weekend with them. Coming down just a little bit, I think that there's 2 good value plays here that we can identify early in the week. The first one is Jacques Patrick. Say Jacques anytime that you play him. 14 carries last week after 8 in week 1. Got 5 targets through those 2 weeks. You're not going to get a ton of pass game usage out of this guy. It's not a 4, 5, 6 catch possibility out of him. If you want that, you got to pay up for Pumphrey. You got to pay up for somebody like Cameron Artis-Payne. But at 4,400, I can get what I need to get out of him to allow me to afford the other players that I want to pay for at other positions. The other one is Jaquan Gardner. 10 carries last week, 9 carries the week before. Again, no usage in the passing game. Has to score a touchdown to really blow up this salary, but at least he's got this opportunity to have the carries on the ground, which could lead to a touchdown. If we're punting, though, I prefer that first option. Give me Patrick at my running back spot for Tampa Bay against Houston, hoping that he catches a couple of more balls in that situation this week. And I'll take the volume there for 4,400, which allows me to pay up for the wide receivers that I want. Now, if we're looking at high volume wide receivers, which is what we should be looking at, especially in our flex, as we can get players at running back at those prices that are getting 7, 8, 9 carries, but we can get players that are getting 7, 8, 9 targets at the flex position. For me to get there, though, I still want to pay for somebody. And for me to pay for somebody, I want to pay for Nelson Spruce, who we talked about last week, who is kind of a Japan League MLB type player, a quad A player. He's too good for this league, but not good enough to be a superstar yet or whatever, or an everyday player in the NFL, especially not on the team that he's on, being owned by the Los Angeles Rams. And he's behind guys like Brandon Cooks, and he's behind Reynolds, and he's behind Kupp, and he's behind Woods. And they've got this huge stable of wide receivers, and he just can't make that team. If he was on a really bad team with a really bad wide receiving core, maybe he'd make that team and get a shot in the league. Hopefully he does after his performance in this league shows that the kid can actually play football. He did just that when he was at Colorado. He did that in the AAF, and he's doing it here. Hopefully he gets a shot. A couple of years already out of college. 24 targets through 2 weeks, leads the league in that category. 17 catches, did turn 2 of them into touchdowns last week, has 1 game with a 100-yard bonus. He is a lock and load for me at 10-9. I'm going to be playing him. Another player that we want to play this week, if we want to just pay up, we can go up after Cam Phillips, who has 19 targets through 2 weeks with 4 touchdowns. As I said, the Houston offense has been rolling. There's a lot of other players up here. Basically, everybody that's got a 20% or higher target rate, most of them are priced way up. You've got Pearson L with 11 targets last week. You've got Eli Rogers at 9,700. They're letting you pick 2 of these guys, but basically no others. You're going to pay for 1 quarterback. You're going to pay for 2 wide receivers, and then you're going to have to find value. Rashad Ross for DC has been fine, but again, 7 targets through 3 weeks or through 2 weeks is not anywhere close to the amount of volume that these other guys have gotten. Lewis has seen a really good amount of volume through 2 weeks, 13 targets. With 9 and 18 points the first 2 weeks, but again, 9,100 for him. Give me these 2 cats up here around 11K for that amount of volume. And Mikhail McKay, 10 targets through 2 weeks, sitting at 8,800. Let's identify some of the value plays here at wide receiver that we can go after. Keenan Reynolds is one of them. I'm just going to sit here on wide receiver because that's where the value is to me. I mean, even Badette, right? 13 targets through 2 weeks, 8,600. He got injured this last game, came back, still did fine. Prohl, same idea. 10 targets week 1, 4 last week, and his price only comes down to 8,400. Keenan Reynolds is the one for me at 7,400. It is the cheapest guy that has a lot of volume. 15 targets through 2 weeks. At least it stayed steady. His catch percentage is not very high at all. Bad quarterback play. He did score a touchdown last week, had 20 DraftKings points. We're going to need to see this improve. At least he's being targeted down the field, and for 7,400 with the amount of usage that you're getting, if I'm paying in this range, right? If I'm looking for a mid-range player that I have that money left, Keenan Reynolds to me is fine. Another player looking a little bit down at 5,300 for the Dallas Renegades, especially with the way that their passing attack works, is Donald Parham with 17 targets through 2 weeks, 19 DraftKings points last week. Good volume here and good opportunity as well. Looking at the ultra value plays, 4,400 and down, I think that there's 3 guys. One, Nick Holley, who's been a running back for a couple of weeks. We've seen him do well enough at running back. Again, I'd rather have a wide receiver that's going to get me 5 or 6 targets as opposed to a running back that's going to get me 7 to 9 carries and no targets. And Nick Holley's fulfilled that role for us. His price has come down from where it was at running back, as he's really only being utilized as a wide receiver. The DraftKings has moved his position from running back to wide receiver this week at 4,400. I think that he's just fine. Reese Horn at 4,200 has seen 13 targets, 8 receptions on a 19.7% target share this week, is only 4,200 for the Tampa Bay Vipers. Jalen Tolliver at 4,300. Same sort of a situation. He's got 12 targets through 2 games, 16.7% of his team's market share of targets. Hasn't really capitalized on it, but has not scored a touchdown either. Maybe that changes against Houston with the amount of scoring that is expected from them, and Tampa Bay going to be probably forced to play a little bit of catch up there. And a guy who was kind of chalky last week and failed because the New York offense was just poor. That's the only way to explain it. Was Joe Horn, coming off of a week where he had 8 targets in week 1, down to 3 last week. Still sits at only 3,800 if you're looking for a value play with upside. Another good value play here for somebody who is on the field and getting targeted, but they did not score any points last week. And that entire New York offense, if you were looking for value there, as I was, you missed out because they just didn't score very many points whatsoever. So for me, I want to plug in first. I want to plug in Reese Horn, as I said. He's going to be one of my flex plays. We're going to plug in a defense and see which one leaves us there. We're going to go with the defenders because, as I said, Los Angeles allowing so much pressure and dropping back so many times that there's a lot of opportunities for sacks, fumbles, and interceptions there. And defense has played a major role in both of the slates so far, leaving us with 4,600 for a value play. We can go with Tolliver. We can go with Holley. I'm going to go with Holley because his volume has been significantly consistent the first couple of weeks. He's got a very good role in a very good offense. Hopefully he can find his way into the end zone, but that's going to do it for the first look here for week 3 of XFL. If you guys liked it, drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. I'll catch up to you later. Bye.
He's a legend.